Well, voters in Battle River Crowfoot are going to head to the polls today in a by-election that will decide whether Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre returns to the House of Commons.
Look, I'll be honest, having a leader of a political party as your local member of parliament is a trade-off. On the one hand, the leader, in truth, lives in hotel rooms. At the other side, though, is that leader can bring a very powerful megaphone to the local issues of the community.
So that's Mr. Poilievre at a town hall from earlier this year. And while Poilievre is expected to win the Alberta riding, analysts say the race is just the first of several tests, including a looming leadership review. For more on what's at stake today, we are joined from Ottawa by Laurie Turnbull, professor of political science at Dalhousie University. So today is the day, Laurie, the by-election we know already a record-breaking race, the record 214 candidates on that ballot, mostly from the longest ballot committee protest group. As a result, voters are going to need to write in the name of who they're voting for on a blank ballot. Where does this race stand heading into tonight?
Well, I think it's pretty much Pierre Poilievre's to lose. The big question seems to be, is he going to hit that incredibly high threshold of getting like 80% of the vote? Because I mean, typically we wouldn't be having that conversation in the vast majority of ridings in the country. Most MPs, you know, when you win an election, you don't even get half the vote. And so for us to really be talking about, like, is he going to get 80%, 82%? That's a huge threshold, but it is this standard in this riding for Conservative candidates. That's what Damien Carrick got back in April. And so I think the test, kind of as you were alluding to, it's not so much whether he's going to win. I think everybody expects him to do that. It's a question of, is he going to win by the kind of margin that would indicate that he's solidly in a leadership position, he solidly won this riding, and the questions that might be percolating about his leadership will die out, you know, maybe in the event that he really wins this by a landslide.
We were just sharing with our viewers the signs that are in that riding right now, reminding people to write a first and last name, big block letters, how to spell his name correctly, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Laurie, this is the second time Poilievre is running for a seat in the House of Commons. Obviously, there was the election earlier this year. He lost that. Now he's in Alberta. What stood out to you from how Poilievre has approached both of these campaigns, this in particular?
Well, I mean, as he mentioned in the clip that you played, he's the leader of the opposition. And there are pros and cons to that. I mean, I don't think he didn't put it into pros and cons. It's kind of a balancing act. It's you know, like the person is at the same time the representative of the riding and then plays a big role on the national level. And so I think, honestly, in both cases, when he ran in Carleton in April and when he's running here now in Battle River Crowfoot, you can see him try to do both. I think a lot of the messaging that we hear from him on the public scale and the national scale is related to issues that are national. He's running to be a competitor to Mark Carney as the Prime Minister. He wants to be Prime Minister, but at the same time, he wants to make a pitch to the local riding that he wants to represent them too. So I think the likelihood is that when Pierre Poilievre goes door to door, which he's very good at, he's an incredible campaigner. He's been doing this for 20 years. Like he's very good at this. And so when he goes around and talks to people, he's talking about the local issues. He's building some trust with the constituents to say, yeah, I'm from Ottawa, but I can represent you and I understand where you are on this. I think in a lot of ways, and this will be analyzed for a long time, where things went off the rails a bit for him in Carleton was trying to bridge those two roles between being the official opposition leader, the Conservative leader, and then being the local riding representative. There were things, I think, like him being supportive of the Freedom Convoy, for example, a few years ago, which as a Conservative leader he wanted to do. That didn't necessarily play so well in a riding in Ottawa, which was extremely impacted by that whole exercise.
Yeah, and of course the criticism in this riding from the local constituents has primarily been the fact that he has come from, you know, being in Ottawa for 20 years and now he's been dropped in here. The local riding association, not really part of that process. But Poilievre, we know, is going to be in Camrose tonight when those results start to come in. So what are you going to be watching for from his speech, whatever happens tonight?
Well, I mean, I'm interested to see what kind of tone he takes with respect to the size of the win he gets. You know, what will he say to these constituents by way of reassuring that even though, you know, he's, as you say, he has been an Ottawa MP for 20 years, Then he's dropped into this riding because it didn't go well for him in Carleton this time. How is he going to bridge that gap? The other thing is, I don't know what the kind of, well, none of us really knows what kind of trajectory is going to come forward here. He's going to have a leadership review in January. Whatever happens tonight, it's not going to be the end of the conversation. He's still coming back to, if he wins, he's coming back to a very different parliament in a very different context where, we're talking about Trump, we're talking about nation building projects. Prime Minister Mark Carney is a very different person from former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who Poilievre clearly had a very personal and sometimes, I think, very explosive dynamic with. Mark Carney's a different person. How will Poilievre respond to that? How will he fit in the context of the new parliament after having really not been heard very much over the past few months?
Well, and interesting to see how Prime Minister Carney also responds to him across the aisle. Lots to watch for. Thanks for joining us this morning to set it all up, Lori.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.